I never thought one night could change my entire life. But here I am, sitting on the bathroom floor, holding a positive pregnancy test and shaking hands, trying to piece together how everything spiraled so fast. Just a few weeks ago, my life was ordinary, maybe even a little boring. I was married, comfortable, and honestly, feeling a bit invisible in my own home. My husband, Daniel, had become distant. We barely spoke unless it was about bills or errands. Intimacy felt like a thing of the past. I tried to ignore it, to convince myself that every marriage goes through dry spells. But deep down, I was craving something more. Not just passion, but attention. Affection. A reminder that I still mattered to someone. That's when Michael came back into my life. He wasn't a stranger. We knew each other from college, a friend of a friend kind of thing. I bumped into him at a work event, completely by accident. We started talking, catching up like old friends do. He was charming in that effortless way that makes you feel seen. He remembered little things I didn't think anyone would, like the way I used to hate black coffee or how I always hummed when I was nervous. Our conversation was innocent enough at first, just laughter and harmless memories. But there was something in his eyes, and I felt it too, a pull, an energy I hadn't felt in years. He told me, just one night. That's all he asked for. One night to forget everything, one night without consequences. And I believed him. I told myself I deserved it. That it didn't have to mean anything. That it would just be a memory I'd carry in silence. So I said yes. I said yes to something that should have stayed a fantasy. That night was everything I thought I wanted, passionate, wild, and strangely comforting. I didn't think past the morning after. I didn't think about what it would mean for my marriage. Or for my future. And now. I'm pregnant. I don't know how to explain this to anyone. Not to Daniel, who still doesn't have a clue. Not to Michael, who probably assumes I've moved on. And definitely not to myself, because I haven't even figured out what I'm feeling. Shame? Regret? Or something much more complicated? I keep replaying that night in my head, wondering if I made the biggest mistake of my life, or if this is some twisted version of fate. All I know is, the lie I told myself, that one night doesn't change anything, was never true. And now, with a secret growing inside me and a marriage already on shaky ground, I have no idea what comes next. But something tells me, the truth is going to come out. One way or another. I couldn't sleep that night. I just kept staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft ticking of the clock on the wall, thinking about how fast everything had changed. The pregnancy test was still on the bathroom counter. I hadn't touched it since I dropped it there, like it might disappear if I just looked away long enough. But it didn't. And the truth? It wasn't going anywhere. My mind was racing with questions I didn't know how to answer. Was it even Michael's? Could it be Daniel's? I tried to do the math, to trace dates in my head, but everything felt blurry. That night with Michael was just 2 weeks ago, and I knew in my gut that this wasn't Daniel's child. We hadn't been close in months. That part hurt even more. Daniel had been working late almost every night. He said it was a busy season at work, but part of me wondered if there was someone else. Maybe we were both drifting in our own ways, too scared or too tired to say it out loud. Our conversations were short, dry, and mostly about things like groceries or fixing the leaky sink. We had stopped really seeing each other. And now, here I was, carrying a secret neither of us were prepared for. I kept thinking about Michael. I hadn't spoken to him since that night. He left early the next morning, kissed me on the cheek, and whispered, "Take care of yourself." That was it. No promises. No follow-up. Just a quiet goodbye like he knew it would never be more than that. And I told myself I was okay with it. But I wasn't. I don't even know what I expected from him. A text? A call? Some kind of sign that he felt even half of what I did? Because truthfully, it didn't feel like just one night to me. It felt like something else. Something that shouldn't have happened, but somehow still meant something. I tried to go on like nothing was wrong. I showed up to work, smiled through meetings, and even cooked dinner like usual. But inside, I was falling apart. Every moment was a battle to keep it together. Every time Daniel looked at me, I wondered if he could tell. If he could see it in my eyes, that something was off. That I was hiding something. And deep down, I knew the clock was ticking. Sooner or later, I'd have to face the truth, and figure out what I was going to do next. A few days later, I scheduled an appointment with my doctor, just to be sure. As I sat in the waiting room, surrounded by magazines and soft music playing through overhead speakers, I felt like I didn't belong there. Like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. The nurse called my name, and every step into that room made it feel more real. When the doctor confirmed it, I nodded quietly, barely listening. My body was there, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Everything felt like it was spinning out of control. At home, Daniel was acting strangely too. He seemed more distant than usual, distracted. I caught him staring at his phone more than once, quickly locking it when I walked by. Part of me wanted to believe it was just work, but my instincts were louder than my excuses. Something was going on with him. And here we were, two people under one roof, both hiding something, both breaking silently. Around the same time, Michael messaged me. Just a simple, "Hey, been thinking about you." I stared at those words for a long time. My hands were sweating. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell him everything. That I was pregnant. That I wasn't okay. But instead, I typed back, "I've been thinking about you too." That was it. Nothing more. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. Not yet. Maybe I was scared of his reaction. Or maybe, deep down, I already knew he'd disappear the moment he found out. That same week, Daniel told me he had a work trip coming up, 3 days out of town. The way he said it, so casual, made my stomach twist. I didn't trust him. Not anymore. Something in his eyes looked guilty, even tired. I watched him pack his bag and wondered if this trip was more than just business. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was judging him while carrying someone else's child. Each day felt heavier than the last. I couldn't escape the feeling that everything around me was crumbling. I kept rehearsing conversations in my head, what I'd say to Daniel, how I'd break the news to Michael. But I said nothing. I wore a smile and kept moving through the motions of a life I no longer recognized. And all the while, the secret I carried inside me grew bigger, waiting for the moment when everything would come crashing down. Daniel left for his trip on a Thursday morning. I stood at the doorway, watching him load his suitcase into the car, every part of me screaming to ask the questions I had been too afraid to voice. Where was he really going? Was there someone else? But the words stayed stuck in my throat, and all I managed was a quiet drive safe. He kissed my cheek, but it felt distant, like it was just for show. As he drove away, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in weeks, I was alone with my thoughts. And the silence only made everything louder. That evening, I sat in bed holding my phone, reading and rereading Michael's last message. Been thinking about you. I wanted to believe there was something real between us, that I hadn't made the biggest mistake of my life. My fingers hovered over the screen before I finally typed, "I need to talk to you. It's important." He replied almost instantly. "Tonight?" My heart jumped. I said yes. When he arrived, it was like stepping into a dream I didn't trust. He looked the same, calm, effortless, but there was a nervous energy in the air. We sat in the living room, barely making eye contact at first. I didn't know how to begin. I opened my mouth a few times but no words came. He must have sensed it. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low, steady. I swallowed hard, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself. I'm pregnant, I whispered. Silence. The look in his eyes changed instantly. He didn't move. He didn't speak. Just stared like he hadn't heard me right. It's yours, I added, the words cutting through the quiet like glass. I couldn't take them back now. He leaned back on the couch, rubbing his hands over his face. Are you sure? He finally asked. I nodded. That was when he stood up, pacing the room, breathing hard. This wasn't supposed to happen, he muttered. You said it was just one night. In that moment, I felt completely exposed. I wasn't sure if he was angry, scared, or both. I didn't know what he would say next, or if he would just walk out and disappear again. I stood up too, my voice shaking. I didn't plan this. I'm scared too. Before he could answer, we both turned as the front door suddenly creaked open. Daniel's voice echoed from the hallway. You left your charger, and then everything stopped. The moment Daniel stepped inside, the air thickened, and my heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Michael froze, eyes darting toward the door. I felt caught between two worlds, one I was supposed to belong to and one I had shattered with secrets. Daniel's gaze flickered from me to Michael, confusion and something darker flashing across his face. What's going on here? He asked, voice low but sharp. I opened my mouth, but the words tangled up inside me. How do you explain betrayal, lies, and a secret pregnancy all at once? Michael cleared his throat, stepping forward awkwardly. Daniel, I wasn't expecting you, he said, but the words felt hollow. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Who is this? He demanded. I felt my hands tremble. Michael, I said quietly, he's someone from before. Daniel looked at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. Before what? He asked, voice tighter now. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Before our marriage crumbled. Before we stopped talking. Before I made the biggest mistake of my life. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, pacing a little. So, this is the guy, he said, voice rising. The one you've been hiding? My heart broke hearing the bitterness in his words. It's not like that, I tried to explain, but Daniel cut me off. Not like that? You tell me you're pregnant, and now I find out you've been seeing him? His eyes searched mine, hurt and anger clashing in a way I'd never seen before. Michael's voice softened. Daniel, I didn't mean to come between you two. I thought it was just one night, but things got complicated. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. Complicated? You have no idea what you've done. I felt tears sting my eyes. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run away. But I stayed rooted, knowing I had to face this. My life was unraveling in front of me, and there was no turning back. Just as tension peaked, Daniel's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He glanced at the screen, and his face went pale. I watched as he read the message, the weight of it sinking in. It's from work, he said finally, voice hollow. There's been an accident. My breath caught. What kind of accident? I asked. Daniel shook his head, eyes still glued to his phone. A car crash. One of my clients, he trailed off. The silence between us was suffocating. For a moment, Michael and I exchanged a glance, both unsure what to say. The room felt heavy with secrets, lies, and now, something new and terrifying. The lines between past and present, truth and deception, were blurring faster than I could keep up with. And as Daniel's phone rang again, I realized this night was far from over. The fallout from that one night was just beginning, and none of us knew how deep the damage would go. Daniel's phone call pulled him away from the room, and Michael and I were left alone, the silence between us thicker than ever. I didn't know what to say or how to feel. The truth was hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. When Daniel returned, his face was pale, eyes glassy with exhaustion and worry. The client didn't make it, he said quietly. The weight of his words hit me harder than I expected. For all our troubles, life had just thrown us something none of us could control. But there was no time to breathe. Daniel's loss added a strange urgency to the night. He looked at Michael, then back at me, his voice steady but low. "We need to figure this out. Everything. Now." I nodded, feeling the gravity settle deep inside. I owed it to him, to myself, to stop running from the truth. I started by telling everything. How the distance in our marriage made me vulnerable, how Michael showed up at a time when I was lonely, how that one night changed everything. When I finally said the words, "I'm pregnant," the room went quiet again. Daniel's face shifted between shock and something softer, a pain I hadn't seen before. "We'll deal with this," he said firmly, "together. But no more secrets." Michael, who had been silent most of the time, finally spoke. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, Daniel. And I never wanted to hurt her." There was honesty in his voice that made the tension crack just a little. For the first time in weeks, it felt like maybe there was a chance to rebuild. Daniel and I talked late into the night, about the past, about mistakes, and about what the future could hold. We didn't have all the answers, but for once, we had honesty. And maybe that was enough. Just when I thought we might find some peace, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. I opened it slowly, and my breath caught. A photo appeared, clear and unmistakable. It was me, taken weeks ago, in a moment I thought was private. And a message, "You're not as safe as you think." My hands trembled as I showed Daniel and Michael. The room froze. We had just started to unravel one secret, and now it was clear there was more lurking in the shadows. Someone was watching, waiting to pull us back into a darker place. The night that began with confessions and grief was far from over. And the real storm was only just beginning. We stared at the message, the weight of it sinking in slowly. Whoever had sent it was someone who knew more than they should, a reminder that even when you think the worst is behind you, life can still surprise you in ways you never expected. Daniel reached for my hand, a silent promise that we would face whatever came next together. Michael quietly excused himself, leaving us alone to process everything. In the days that followed, Daniel and I made a decision to be honest with each other, no matter how hard it got. We agreed to attend counseling, to rebuild the trust that had been broken, not just by the infidelity, but by years of silence and distance. The pregnancy brought complicated emotions, but it also forced us to look at what really mattered: forgiveness, understanding, and the possibility of a new beginning. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. As for Michael, we kept a cautious distance. The connection we shared wasn't something we could ignore completely, but boundaries had to be drawn, for the sake of everyone involved. I realized that some mistakes don't just disappear overnight, they leave scars that take time to heal. And sometimes, the hardest part is learning to live with those scars while still moving forward. The mysterious message remained unanswered, a lingering shadow that reminded me how fragile life can be when built on secrets. But I chose not to let fear control me. Instead, I focused on what I could change: my choices, my relationships, and my future. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them head-on, armed with honesty and the lessons I'd learned. Looking back, that one night wasn't just a moment of weakness, it was a turning point. It forced me to confront the parts of my life I had ignored, to face the consequences of my actions, and ultimately to grow. Life doesn't always give us clear answers, but it does give us chances to start over. And sometimes, the hardest truths lead to the strongest beginnings. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: mistakes happen, but they don't have to define us. What matters most is how we respond, whether we choose to hide, run, or face the truth and keep moving forward. My journey isn't over, but I'm no longer afraid of what lies ahead. Because now, I know that even after the darkest nights, there's always a chance for dawn. 27.